Welcome to Stars Podcast, your growth mindset mecca. We are all about self-leadership principles here at Stars Podcast. Our guests come from all over the world with very unique stories of how they hacked their way into success. As you'll quickly find out, nothing happens overnight. And as always, enjoy the journey. Good morning, afternoon, evening. Welcome back to all you Tuesday Live Crew natives. If this is your first time, welcome to the fam. Today you'll be hearing from our friend Cory Hogan. Cory is a former serviceman for the U.S. Navy, a defense contractor working on data analysis and information of deployed assets. He created a virtual reality arcade, and COVID impacted those dreams, and now Cory has resurfaced after doing some serious soul searching. His new endeavor is new Tortuga NFT Project that tokenizes real-life real estate, offering the holders a unique opportunity in the new Web3 live-to-earn community. Please join me in welcoming Cory Hogan onto the show. Hey, here's a little disclaimer. My mic, I messed it up again. It gets better about 5 minutes in, so please don't judge me too hard. One of these days I'll remember to do a mic check. But please join me, Cory Hogan, onto the show. Enjoy. Right. All right, guys, welcome back to Stars Podcast. This is Ron Jordan, your host, coming out of Rocinante Studios in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. Today we have a special guest coming in, a fellow V friend. I've known him for now over just under a year now. Cory Hogan is on the show today, and he's got a unique NFT project and a unique story behind his character here. So wanted to welcome Cory to the show. Welcome, brother.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate the chance to chat.
Yeah, thank you so much for using the Calendly app the way that it was intended for. I tell you what, anybody who's looking to do a podcast, I highly recommend using some sort of calendar because tracking down and aligning calendars is insane. So I appreciate you just putting it on there and getting it going. So
I appreciate you having that and showing it to me, because that's going to be like the first tool I copy from you when I try to do similar, because it was way better than any scheduling thing I've tried to use in the past. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, because you can put on your availability and then boom, when you have to be available. It's kind of, whenever we talk about time and those types of things, it's like you just have to make sure that you're really cautious about it, because you can waste a lot of time.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this, Cory, why do you want to do a podcast? Why do you want to be on a podcast? I always like to ask that question because, taking time out of your week and doing the normal stuff and doesn't include a podcast. I'm curious why you want to be on one or do one.
Well, I'm trying to accomplish something on a bigger scale that just requires me to the saying that I like to tell myself in my head is, if you want to be an anomaly, you have to act like one. And when it comes down to it, I am trying to do something big and abnormal. And so I think I've got to start by getting the world's attention a little bit to be able to talk about what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
And, it's leading me also to this personal growth where I'm realizing it's actually a difficult thing for me to be on camera and to talk about myself or to talk about what I'm up to. Like the openness is difficult. Mm-hmm. And so that makes me want to do it more. Like I want to get over that. I found something that I can improve in kind of a vulnerability in my personality I'd really like to explore and get through. So that's an active part of what I'm doing as well.
Oh, word. Yeah, that's actually really cool that you can lean in like that. And you said to be an anomaly, you got to act like an anomaly. And David Goggins says something similar to that, which is be uncommon amongst uncommon people. Mm-hmm. Did that change over my microphone?
Yeah, got you. No problem.
Yeah. For some reason, so I have this, I'm going to go off on a sidetrack here. I got this this one USB that goes to 4 USB. It's a Sabrent, and for whatever reason, this end button is very sensitive, and it will just like misclick. Like it'll just turn off on me, and I for whatever reason, my dumb self, I always plug my microphone into that port
and wait for that. Yeah.
So like I was looking over and I saw that it was dimmed out because it has like these blue lights on it. I was like, son of a bitch, what's that about? And then boom, it was a microphone. So now I have a real microphone.
Nice.
Anyhow, David Goggins says, be uncommon amongst uncommon people is what he always tells. That's his thing. And something else that he brought up today, or not today, but last week, that you could probably appreciate, and I'm sure that you go through this, is win the morning.
Win the morning. I'm not surprised that anything I follow and hear or adhere to would also come from the mouth of David Goggins, because it just seems like I resonate well with those SEAL guys, with the retired SEALs, and they just have a lot of the same philosophies. But absolutely, that's win the morning. I haven't even heard you expound upon it, but I bet it's exactly the philosophy that I have for the morning. So you might not win anything else, but you can start your day with a victory instead of starting your day behind the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. So where does that like growth mindset come from for you? Because typically what happens is we end up, and I'm speaking from personal experience, is like you end up down this rabbit hole of like not enjoying who you are as a person. Something happens and then boom, you make this big change, or you make incremental changes. Is that something that you've gone through? Is it a big change in your life, and why you're being so introspective?
It's a really good question.
You don't have to get too deep into it if you don't want to.
No, and well, there's nothing that basically nothing I'm not willing to go into, but I wasn't even necessarily thinking that. I just want to like really take in the question.
Sure.
I kind of have a two-part answer. On some level, it's like built in. I don't know if I got it from my parents as like a genetic, like we just got this kind of need to always be doing something, and it's like more satisfaction in the process of improving than in the accomplishment of anything. And also I think that I definitely got probably some of that part of it from the nurture aspect, where childhood wasn't like rosy or anything. I did have to grow up and learn kind of like a hunger, you know what I mean, is like built in. Like I just wasn't ever satisfied, or I couldn't afford to be for a long time. So yeah. But when you had, that was one of the last things you said. I mean, you specifically were talking about growth, and you said, I forgot the words you said, but I have had a more recent, like about a year ago, separated from my wife, and 18 months ago separated, and had to move back into to Colorado, get a new job, new house. I had closed my business shortly before that, and sold my house shortly before that. So starting from scratch, and contemplating the nature of starting from scratch. Why was I having to start from scratch? It was a result of the decisions I had made and priorities I had set. And so I had to really, I wanted to not hit reset in my life again. I wanted this to be the last time I had to do that. So I wanted to really think about what could I stand behind that I had done before, decisions I had made for the right reasons that I would make again. And what was a genuine fuck up? You know what I mean? And what were sort of the mental pitfalls, you know what I mean? I would like to just say shouts out to Jonathan LaVille too, from the clubhouse rooms. He talked a lot about mental, when we first started meeting in May, June, talking about mental health and what your unique attributes are being so important for stock trading and financial decisions. And I listening to that, I decided to apply that thinking towards my business decisions, and realized that it was really, if I had been thinking that way and been playing mental chess with my own strengths and vulnerabilities, I could have been way more successful. And so that's kind of where I've been at, is looking at what are my personal weaknesses, where do I need to grow, to make sure I'm on a solid foundation going forward.
Now, focusing on those things that you need to improve is obviously something that you have a passion for. My question next is, when do you celebrate those positive things? How do you celebrate the positive things that you do have, because we have to recognize those positives in order to use them as our strengths to build our weaknesses. So like, how do you celebrate those, or how do you celebrate successes during the process of this? Because it can be pretty daunting if you never celebrate the small victories.
Absolutely. Well, I'll start by saying that's not a strength of mine. So Which is probably not a surprise after hearing how good I am at finding the flaws and focusing on those. But I have gotten a lot better at it. And so this is actually, I'd like to shout out to, not shout out again, but just recall experience that I had when I met Gary Vee. I got to have a dinner with him in New York for VoiceCon in 2018, and got a chance to ask him a question. And I asked him, how do you deal with when you're not performing to the level that you can? You know, you're somebody that knows you have this level of potential. How do you deal with yourself when you know you're not reaching? How do you not beat yourself up? And it's not what I was asking, but it's kind of what I was asking. And he saw through that. And I thought about this moment for so long. He gave me like the best parenting that he could have gave at the moment. And he said, you have to focus on, you have to figure out how to not beat yourself up.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, that's one of the hardest parts, is to not beat yourself up.
Mm-hmm. And I said, how do you do that? And he said, I can see that that's something you're not strong at. And he said that you're just going to have to chip away at it incrementally. And I've taken that seriously. So I found incremental ways to chip away at it. And a lot of it is positive self-talk. So even small things, like if you notice, that's why I start with making my bed. There's a few different reasons I start with making my bed in the morning. But one of the things that I get from that selfishly, and everybody should do this for themselves and take it, is a win. It's the victory. It's I did something. Because if you walk around, for me, for example, my bed's right there, my bathroom's right here. It's all takes place right here. If I'm walking around here all groggy in the morning and not getting after my day, and I turn around and my bed's not made, the lights aren't on, I'm still in dangerous territory. I could still fall back in the bed and the day could still go downhill, but I can change the narrative. I can really flip the script by just putting a line in the sand, like getting one foothold in, make the bed, turn on the light, go get dressed, brush the teeth, or splash water on the face, or whatever it is. I think about one thing at a time. And then I look back throughout the day and I sometimes have to tally up. This is, I can notice when I feel like I'm losing the day. And I actually love this. I love this exercise. But if I feel like I've lost the day, like if there's been a few hours where I feel like maybe I haven't been productive, I can't, it's like I've been zoned out or not present. If I take the time to recount, I made my bed, I went to the gym. Did I phone in my session at the gym? No, it was probably a pretty good session. You know, I can start to rack up things that I did. I got home, I fed the kids, I got them to school on time. Oh yeah, there's a lot of shit I have to do every day. My life isn't empty. It was a busy ass day. It doesn't feel special maybe, but my normal day is full of a lot of stuff, and everybody can rack up these wins. That's probably been the most positive thing, is because if I didn't give myself the actual like data, then I couldn't, that's what it's taken for me to start giving myself credit, giving myself actually having like more self-esteem and a better self picture of the positive, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Just running through a normal parent day, a normal adult parent day is a pretty good barometer of success for me as well. Like you look back on, you're like, holy moly, like how did I do all that? And I have a job, and I'm like, you really do end up stacking up a lot of wins. But like you said, it starts with those small incremental changes. And for you, it was as simple as making the bed. I use the one brushing your teeth or whatever, like just get some wins as soon as you wake up. I love that.
I feel like I've been fighting against the trend of having to develop habits for self-care. Like you said, brushing your teeth, that just made me think about this. So I've got it built into my kids now. That's one thing I'm really proud of, is now when they wake up, it's not a chore. They don't have to be yelled at or harped at to go like brush their teeth, take a shower, brush their hair, and get ready for the day. Like I've succeeded in building it into their routine. And that's something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, that's amazing. I brought this up before, and those of you who are listening, my apologies, but I love telling this story. I was watching a movie, and it was about POWs, and the general that was a POW was telling his guys, because one guy was like not shaving and not keeping care of himself. And he said, listen, if you want to survive this POW camp, you have to maintain hygiene. Like you have to stay engaged. You got to stay in the fight. And to me, that's going to stick with me forever, because that's literally like what it is in your daily life. Whenever you're going through a struggle or a depressive phase or whatever, or I don't even want to call it depressive phase for those of you who do struggle with this on a continuous basis, but you got to stay in the fight. Like this, life is long. It's a long time. I mean, people say that life is short. For me, I feel like it's long, because you have to go through this every single day. It is an absolute grind. But to come up with a process that you're coming up with to immediately have a instead of self-doubt, you have self-confidence now to then go do other stuff, which brings me to like your big audacious goal that you have with a lot of what you're trying to do. Can you like explain where you're at in the process of like the NFT project and you know, you tell me what you want to tell me about the project that you're working on, because I would love to get into that, because now we've laid the groundwork of where Cory is on a positivity standpoint. You have these processes put in place, and now you're able to, now that you have your self-leadership taken care of, now you can expand. And this is the part to me where I think growth is like, whenever you have this growth mindset, these are the types of things that you can do after you get your shit together. Yeah. The stuff you're working on. And so I'm really excited about what you have on the next chapter here.
I'm going to start off with the best, to segue best from what you just said, because I really want to like second that point. But when you have your own shit together is when you can do something like this. So I had this idea in June, you know, and then I realized that it was actually maybe the 20th time I had this idea in my life before I decided to really figure out how I was going to go after it. But it's taken 8 months because I went through, I think, 2 depressive phases since then. And I will call it a depressive phase because it's something I'll deal with several times this year, like going in and out. So it's, and I've dealt with for years, and people should not hide from that. You have to embrace it to win it. So that just is what it is for me.
I'm tagging that for sure. Embrace it to win it. You guys heard that one here. That's a Cory special. Thank you.
That threw me off just a little bit. I like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. But
you said you've gone through 2 depressive phases. Like you started this process in June, but it hasn't come to fruition because you knew you still had some work to do.
Thank you. Absolutely. So right now I'm being loud about it. I'm starting to talk about it and get people involved because the timing is right. I'm moving to Virginia, and I've really been able to put a lot of debts aside, and I've been able to figure out a lot of things personally and deal with some personal issues. And those things would have kept me from being able to dive into this NFT project. My NFT project is called New Tortuga, and I'm going to talk a lot about it, but it's very special to me. It's my baby. And that's one thing I learned from my last business, which I talk about too, if we need to, but I'm going to treat it like a human being, almost like a baby that I'm taking care of. It's going to get that level of care from me. And I knew that I had to prioritize the real humans in my life, including myself, before I brought in another one that I was going to treat like that. And so it just feels right. And when it didn't feel right, I knew I just trusted my gut, and I didn't go for it. You know, doing the right thing is always the right thing. Something you'll hear that, like Gary Vee will say that, and maniacs will repeat it. But I kind of feel like doing the wrong thing is always the wrong thing too. And anything can make it the wrong thing for you. You got to trust your gut on that. So I've been delaying a lot based on that gut feeling. When is it right? And that's intuition, just knowing me, my family, and everything. So NFT, New Tortuga is going to be a project that solves the logistical issues of creating what I want to create, and uses NFTs to do that. Vice deciding to do an NFT project, which is, I'll talk through the thought process. I went through it with that on a little bit, but
yeah, because when I think, oh, go ahead.
The dream since I was a kid has always been a community on a ranch, a place where people would come and like live together. I got an opportunity to do this a couple times when I was a kid. I lived on land that my parents owned for a short period of time, and I got to experience what it was like to be out in the open and have that life. I lived on a ranch with a couple of uncles of mine when in another part of our life, and got to experience like sharing farming and eating up at the farmhouse. And I really enjoyed this community of helping to take care of each other. And I really enjoyed, I used to do this. I used to ride motocross on the weekends when I was a teenager, and we would come together. There'd be hundreds of families that would come together in their campers for these events for the whole weekend. And there was something so special just about the community aspect. And I realized looking back on it, how much that was what I loved, and not even the sport as much as I thought, community and like being together in that environment was always something really special to me. And I went through this process of building this whole dream out when I was 15, how I would pursue funding and have a prospectus and buy a large piece of land and offer these different levels of recreation on the land and try to bring people together. And it just went like down the toilet, like so many people's dreams do. You don't believe that you can really go after it, and you don't see it as something that's realistic. And so I didn't revisit it until, I was 33, which is crazy. But I had that same dream come up and take place, and I planned it out in different forms 3 or 4 times over my adult life, and this NFT thing set the stage for it to be different. When I got, that kind of sets the stage for why I want to build a community, which is what New Tortuga is. Now to set the stage for why it's an NFT project, I got into NFTs with VeeFriends, bought VeeFriends on day one with a lot of our best friends here. And then I got excited and decided I was willing to trade, and I got overly excited one day, and I made a bad trade in a confidence scam, and lost my VeeFriend and one of my 2 VeeFriends, and I lost Bored Ape Yacht Club, which to be fair, I was paper handsing just to get a better VeeFriend. But I lost those. And when the VeeFriend hit the market, the scammer was selling it a couple of weeks later. The VeeFriends community got together and didn't ask me about it, didn't think about it even hardly themselves. They just acted, and in 13 hours raised the ETH to buy it back and send it to my wallet. So
such a beautiful community we have, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you find these people?
I don't know. And that really fucked me up, because almost worse than losing my VeeFriend. It's like making that mistake was a normal thing. Looking back over my life, kind of like hitting the reset button and making large mistakes. That's not kind of a new thing for me. That's what I'm trying to grow out of. And
yeah, this
was like the community saying, no, like, we're going to take care of you. You're going to be taken care of. And that is different. And that level of like love has been life-changing. I mean, it's changed the way I think, and forced me to do that in a way that is like, is indescribable.
Right. And well, it makes you feel worthy. It makes you feel like you have worth.
And
like,
you have to,
your peers have collectively said, Cory needs to be here. Like, collectively, Cory needs to be here. And that's the part, like, I can tell, like, that's super emotional for you. And it is for me too. Like, I got goose pimples just thinking about it, because like the love matters. Like the acceptance and the inclusivity. You have no idea what and to them, maybe it was large. I don't want to call it small, but like any small act of kindness could absolutely change somebody's life, which could in turn change the world. Honestly, like that's how like goofy I get immediately.
Well, it's not far-fetched at all. I mean, I've always kind of thought in that ripple effect way, but I mean, literally, you can take what I'm doing as a good example. Right. Even if I fail, I'm going to do something amazing for somebody, Yeah. That I hope is at least that exceeds what they did for me. That's what I want to do. You know what I mean? I'm driven to do. I've always been driven to do that, but it's like now, go ahead. I think you've got a technique here to actually put me in a productive direction.
Yeah. So I want to understand. Let's go back a little bit, because you were into motocross and you were in like a collective, almost like farming with your family, like a co-op of farmers, and you guys would all work on this farm together. You also did the motocross, and now you're going to try and combine those into almost like a summer camp of sorts inside of your new Tortuga, is what it sounds like. Like you want to have multiple recreations on land, and like I'm thinking like fishing and all of this stuff. So like what are some of those recreations that you do want to have on there, and like maybe give us a rundown as to why you would even include some of these things?
Well, you did a great job of putting me in on a direction I need to go in, realizing that I've set the stage maybe a little bit incorrectly. So let me lay a little bit more on the ground floor about what the Tortuga.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Okay. So in Suffolk, Virginia, I'm going to buy between 125 and 200 acres of land, and I'm going to secure it with an NFT project, so that token holders will own the land either on chain or own a company that owns the land. And that's one of the functions that I'm going to allow founders to help me decide how we roll, how progressive we want to be, or how safe we want to be. But we're going to own this land. And the purpose of it is going to be kind of multifaceted. Number one is community building. The passion behind it is that I want to give people a place that they can come, or a community that they can turn to for resources. So that however they can access us, what they're getting from New Tortuga is closer to actual freedom, like financial freedom, health, independence, mental freedom, and so kind of out of the rat race is what I mean by freedom. You know, I met a couple of really young entrepreneurs that I like to use as an example. I ran a small little incubator type operation out of my house because I had so many bedrooms while I was running Studio 8 VR in Colorado Springs 2 years ago. And so the four of us were working on different things. And these two guys they wanted to build a catering business run out of food trucks. They had just finished their culinary school in Texas and came up to Colorado Springs to make it. They had gotten, places at restaurants, jobs at restaurants, and they got a place with me. And I really wanted to set them up for the best entrepreneurial success, because guys like this have to first figure out how to make it. And to me, that's not a problem in life. You should have to figure out how to make it. But it's kind of a problem to me personally. It's a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. It pisses me off that like we're missing people like Nikola Tesla and amazing entrepreneurs who don't make it because they didn't have an aunt or an uncle or a mom or a dad or somebody or big brother or sister to give them a leg up like when they needed it. So many people have to fight an unfair bullshit uphill battle, and everybody does, and a lot of people make it past that. So I don't want to take away from the merits of the struggle, but I just want to give people a leg up. If that's entrepreneurs getting a free podcast studio to use, or they can virtually use my computers to make 3D models if they can't come in person, or if they need land to prove that they can sequester carbon better than anybody else in the world, then I'm going to give them that land. Like that's what New Tortuga is going to be about, is giving back to the community that gave back to me and paying it forward, showing people what it feels like to have somebody believe in you and give you the chance to accomplish your dream. And that's what I'm going to do on New Tortuga. So we're going to buy this land, then I'm going to build infrastructure on the land, places to live on the land, and then start providing these services. So like one of the first things that we're going to do is actually farm crops to take to farmers markets to start generating that food for the people living there, obviously, but also an income that way. And the income is also going to benefit token holders. That's one thing that I think the biggest and best way to help people here is money. So, token holders earning income from the land is going to be kind of one of the main things I'm going to pursue early.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
I went through that very quickly, probably presented some opportunities for questions. And Hopefully I didn't make it more confusing.
No, it's not more confusing whatsoever. I think do you know, I'm sure you've heard of it, Camp Woodward it's extreme sports.
I haven't heard of Camp Woodward.
So Camp Woodward is in Pennsylvania, and it's like an extreme sports camp. And, those who like BMXing, skateboarding, snowboarding, gymnastics, cheerleading, all those things, they have a place to go. Like there's this.
Okay.
Also, because when you brought up, you want to give them resources, there's also inside of that, the other side is audiovisual, computer graphics, editing, photography. All of those things are in this like one site. It's at Camp Woodward.
Oh, okay.
And it's like it sounds a lot like what you're doing, what you're attempting to do with New Tortuga is like, you're going to give these resources, and then how you're going to get the resources is through income from the initial seed of this, which is from the farming crops. Correct?
Yes. And iterative
the NFT holders.
Mm-hmm. So let me explain how I want to do the NFTs and a little bit of my philosophy behind the NFT project as well. So as soon as I really got it with NFTs, around the time that I was willing to spend money on a VFriend, like I knew that I wanted to do an NFT project. I wanted to be able to use this tool, but I didn't necessarily know exactly how. And it really took me having the confidence to follow this path and then reverse engineer how I can use NFTs to get to a place where I was confident saying, okay, now it can be an NFT project. Now I know how I'm going to do it. So the way that I'm going to do it is through iterations. And what I really don't want to do is commit to a roadmap, like a linear roadmap, because I know my project is just not like other NFT projects. We're building something in the real world and just using NFTs to accomplish it. So the first iteration is going to be a Founders Club NFT, where holders of the Founders Club NFT will be part owners of New Tortuga in perpetuity. They'll be seeded into every other iteration beyond that. So it's kind of always rewarding people who had to take the biggest leap of faith in the beginning. And that's going to be small. I'm only trying to raise like $20,000, $30,000, I think, it would actually be more than ample. What I want to accomplish with the founders round is like developing the smart contract, founding the business, and establishing like the PO box and all kinds of things, so that, because that's the number one goal, is actually build this business. And I want to take the opportunity to say here too, that this is an opportunity where the entrepreneur Cory could put up a couple $1,000s and get this done. But I want to point out that just my past experience, I'm explicitly not doing that. I want to completely fund this through the NFT project so that holders are always in control. I could do that and then I'd be in control. And I want to build this different and transparently right from the get-go. So even though it would be a manageable amount of money that, a hungry entrepreneur should probably be willing to go put down, I'm going to talk about it very specifically, that it's going to be community owned from the get-go. That's all.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that.
Go ahead.
No, I like that part of it too, because it allows the community to grow with you and have skin in the game. And through some of these other NFT projects I've been a part of and being in the communities, the ones that are doing well are the ones who have allowed the community to come for the ride with them. And I think that that's a really important piece of building any business, community, whatever you want to call it, a group of people pointed in the same direction. They have to have buy-in. And in order to have buy-in, they got to be part of the process, in my opinion, to some extent, whether that's just listening to you in this podcast, being a part of it, or buying a token, or just being in your Discord or being involved in the conversation. No matter what, having them involved from the beginning, as opposed to here's the project, this is what it is, I think is a really good recipe. So the first round is the Founders Club. And then you were starting to talk about maybe a second round, what you were trying to accomplish with that. I know that you're not trying to roadmap this, and I don't want this to be a pitch thing, but I think it's good for people to understand, the process that goes on whenever
Yeah.
you're talking about a business or a vision, like you have to map this stuff out. You can't go by the seat of your pants and build something
No,
big like this.
no, you have to spend months like making your mirror look like that,
Yep.
and then you scratch it out and you rewrite it on multiple other pages. And it's like, it doesn't end. It just
No.
grows.
Yep.
And
And it evolves. So once you have the 20, 30K on the Founders Club, what happens after that? Have you mapped out anything after that?
Only a little bit. So not specific mapping, but
Yeah.
I appreciate exactly what you said. So I've got all these ideas. And one of the reasons I reached out to you and wanted to start talking about it was, this is the best way to flush out what's wrong, was tangled up in my head that made sense, but actually isn't going to work. You got to sometimes hear it out loud, be like, oh, no, got to change that.
Yep.
What needs to be filled in. The spot in the process that I'm at right now is because what I'm trying to provide is such a utility and not specifically art. I'm in talks with artists throughout the community and explaining my project to them, trying to find somebody who really resonates, and trying to find artists who want to contribute long-term to the second round, which I'll talk about. And it's really been extremely helpful to help me flush out because they want to know what's going on. And it's been a wonderful opportunity for me to see what I'm able to commit to and what I can feel good about, what they feel good about. And it's been fun. So figuring out that the founders round are going to take away something like 10% of profit or ownership of everything is something that I learned from really hashing that out with artists. And then figuring out that round 2 is going to try to raise probably about $500,000 to buy the land, 125 to 200 acres, like I had said. And the way that I want to do that is to feature a number of community artists offering limited pieces, some one-of-ones and some series, which will be like their individual interpretations of the philosophy and of the land and what the project's going to be long-term. Beyond that, I know that the next iteration is probably going to be infrastructure. There's going to be a phase where I'm going to have to think like a city planner to make sure that we're okay in the future. And I really want to be deliberate and patient and not and be right in the decisions that we're making. So the very next phase where I'm at right now, even before I start the founders round, I'm working with artists so that I can start talking publicly with a logo, with branding images. And second is I want to start making content to talk about what we're doing. I want to have conversations like this where I can, if we say something awesome, I can clip it and pass that around. I can try to really get the word out and just be more open about what it is. It's a complicated thing for one, and people, if I'm asking them to believe in something that's different, this is different even for an NFT project. It's radical. For a normie, this is insane. So it's, I should be willing to talk about it a lot. I think I need to let people hear it come to life. So that's what I want to do. And what I mean, I say all that to say we're going to start podcasting, and I want to interview folks and specifically ask these questions, like when I mentioned city planning. Episode 5 of our podcast, the new Tortuga podcast, might be with a city planner, so that I can just specifically ask questions. What do you think I need to worry about first? Where do we go from that? And I'll be interviewing like aquaponics experts, farming experts. Curtis Stone is somebody I really want to go after. There's a few people I want to go after. I want to have you on. I want to ask you, Ron Jordan, specific questions about leading NFT project and decisions that you've had to make over the course.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that way people can see how I built it, how I made the decisions, and how I did the research, and who my consultants were. Like, you just don't have to have any questions. You were here on the right. And if you weren't, here's the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 50 hours or whatever it is. So that's what I want. I want to give that kind of to the future community, all of this history. So this will be some of the really foundational content, actually, probably this conversation. So I hope that's all right.
Dude, I'm so excited about this. And you know what? It was funny that you said that you were going to start podcasting and do infrastructure and like have a city planner on. After your round 2 and you said you were going to buy this land, I literally drew an arrow and it says about
Founder,
a land developer.
developer of the land. Yeah.
That's exactly where I went with it. I'm like, how is Cory going to manage all this land?
And you've got to figure it out. Yep.
You got to figure it out. But, you know, just like I was talking about earlier, having people come along the ride with you, that's the best part about having these recordings available.
Yep.
And this is why, just to give you a little bit of insight as to NF Daddies, was we recorded all of those founder meetings. We recorded all of them. So awesome. If anybody ever wants to historically go back and look at why we made the decisions we made at the very beginning, we recorded it all. And I wanted to have that as an archive, and all the guys were on board with it, because at some point, like what we're doing is historical, just in general. Yeah. Because it's an NFT, like it's just historical. And I think it has value at some point. But yet, when you can bring people along, like we keep interacting on this for the ride with you, man, like that's it. That's the way to really to nail it down. So I appreciate your efforts in that, because you've been thoughtful about it and given it the time that it needed to marinate and be able to be something that is going to be now. So that's awesome.
I found just the other day, I can't believe I wasn't aware of them earlier, but CityDAO. Have you ever heard of CityDAO?
I have not. No,
it's a Wyoming project. So they're incorporated already. That was one of the first things they did. They were founded back in June. And they've got a pretty good Discord going on, and they've already had. It was just shocking to me after 6 months of fleshing out my plans, like I just kind of showed you, you know, how close my plan is to what they've done over the last 6 months. When I found them and I looked at what they've done for the last 6 to 8 months, what I now plan to do, it was really reaffirming that we both must have come to some of the similar conclusions. Now, if you want to pull this off, how you really need to do it. But I encourage anybody to check them out. They're a really good example of how they're building like a city on chain. And it might take them a little bit longer because I'm building something a lot more like a camp, like you said.
Yeah.
But, it's a cool project.
So how are you keeping your head on straight with everything that goes on in your daily life, and then also trying to come up with this huge audacious goal of creating this? What are you doing on the day-to-day to keep things in order from a, like, I want to say mental health perspective, but just from a positivity, keeping things moving perspective? Like what are some of your habits that you're into right now that keep you going?
My number one is that I get to the gym almost every day. You know, 2 days ago, I took a day off, and it was like my first or second day off of the year. So I try not to take days off. That's not saying that I go beat myself up, and I recommend everybody to solve their problem by doing that. But I give myself the goal, and then I attain it every day. Even if I only go and I row for 5 minutes, or if I only do one workout and I look around, and I don't feel great about these days, but I still get to say I went, right? So there are days where I go, I do like 2 exercises, and I look around, I'm just like, maybe I've been going too hard. Maybe I didn't sleep well. Maybe I didn't eat good enough. I don't know what it is, but I'm fucking done. And I leave, and that's fine. I still got there. And that's like the number one staple of my routine. And then I've got something that keeps the days from kind of blending together, and it keeps days from getting lost, and then I can build from there. So I think about it like almost like a to-do list every day. You know, I've got to go to the gym, my self-care and my kids' self-care, check that off. And number one is just to be gracious that not every day is productive. You know, it's a lot of days, the things I just said, I went to the gym, I did my self-care, my kids' self-care. A lot of days, that's all I do. But I don't hit the reset button on my plans. That's like a huge thing too. And I think that in the past I've done that, and I don't know if I'm kind of still forming my whole philosophy on it, but I'll bet it's a problem for a lot of people. Get impatient with your project, get impatient that you're not making progress, and hit reset, start something new. And I have done that so many times in the past. I'll bet entrepreneurs, I think that's just maybe a thing that we do. and not hitting reset on this, having the conviction to keep coming back and realizing this is it, and just be more and more convinced of it every time has been extremely helpful. And so I would say to anybody, if you're out tasting and you find something you don't want to taste anymore, let go of it. That's fine. Like, don't beat yourself up for that, and give yourself days off when you need them. But when there's something that, if you're going to feel bad about not getting back to it, then just get back to it sometime. Just make that commitment to yourself. If you're not getting back to it today, that's fine, but you're not giving up on it. You'll get back to it. Just don't hit reset.
I like that. And I like what you said earlier about your days blending together.
I think that's a COVID problem. That's not going to go. That's a new norm problem for me.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to telework most days, and that's not going away. So I've got to have a real strategy against letting that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is something that a lot of people have struggled with. And I've talked to a ton of people about this, is those who went to the office every single day now are at their homes. A lot of people like it, but there are some people who do struggle with that because they are isolated at that point.
Yeah.
And that isolation can cause some real issues mentally. And I think us having these virtual outlets like we have now are really beneficial. But at the same time, it's like you're on the computer all day. So then to interact with people, you got to stay on the computer and like interact with them on apps and these things. So it's like, at what point can I get out of that it's like a new rat race.
Yeah.
You know, so it's interesting to see how that all plays out. And but again, it goes back to the whole deal is like just staying in the fight, like you said, not hitting the reset button, even whenever you do maybe take 2-3 weeks off. And it's like,
Yeah,
dude, that's so far away from where I was at. And it's like, dude, that's okay, it's all right. But what you also said, you have the conviction to see it through. And I think that's the tipping point. Once you have conviction to move forward on something, and like true conviction, not like you talked yourself into it, but you've tried to talk yourself out of it and you still can't talk yourself out of it anymore.
Yeah.
That's the conviction part. And that to me is the most powerful one, because now it's like, well, nothing's going to stand in the way. I've tried to like burn this to the ground and I can't. Mm-hmm. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I want to say conviction's actually like one of my halves. That's an emotional ingredient that I kind of feel like lately I've been really trying to analyze what I have conviction in and what I don't. And I have a good example. I started a project called VFriends Map. Also, as soon as VFriends came out, I thought a good service that I could provide to the community is this website where people can see where other VFriends live and they can network that way. And it was similar to another project that other VFriends wanted to come up with. And this is a project where we all cared about it. We all thought it was a great idea, but none of us had the conviction to continue to push that brick down the road. And that ended up being okay. You know, we are all pushing the things that we are convicted about down the road, and that's fine. It doesn't mean that we don't care about that idea anymore. For me, what it meant was I believe more in another idea, and I'm going to put my time in that one. Mm-hmm. This one is just not quite enough to like seize my time. And one thing I've really tried to do this year, I just said this one's not enough to seize my time, was an observation, not a decision. And I started paying attention to myself more rather than trying to tell myself how to be and judging myself all the time. Fuck that. Sucks. So yeah. I've just been like trying to be in a little bit more of like a learning about Cory mode. And, you know, that's what I learned in that situation with, okay, I guess I just learned that project's not the one I care enough about. It's going to be this one.
Well, because it only ticked one of the boxes for you. It only ticked the networking box.
Yeah, it didn't tick. It wasn't everything.
It wasn't the full, it was just a piece of this bigger puzzle. And that's the cool part too, that I'm just thinking about is some of those ideas that you have are pieces of this bigger idea. And maybe like, just like you said, you're not beating yourself up over it, but it was a very important piece of the puzzle to get you to this bigger one.
Yeah.
And to gain the conviction, because you're like, wow, that wasn't enough for me, but this part is. And I think that's the important part.
It's part of how you know you're on the right project is you tasted other ones and let them go, you know?
Yeah. It's like the Google thing where they have teams dedicated to try and do new stuff, and 90% of them fail. But like what comes out of those, in the giving yourself that permission to fail at projects and to fail at things, is very important. And just to move on from them. Like, yes, I had the best intentions, but it just didn't work out, and that's all right.
Yep.
Like, I did everything that I said I was going to do. It's just not what I thought it would be. I saw it through. We're done with that now.
And life is long. I'm so grateful for the experiences that I've had over all the experiences that I've had. I've just had a lot. I've gotten to do a lot. But I founded a business and took it all the way and to closing it when COVID came up. And it was such an interesting experience. You know, there's a lot to talk about. And I'm fortunate in the way that it closed. I get to decide whether I call it a failure or not. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't, because I chose to close it. There was a point where I chose to pursue other things instead of that, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be when COVID came around. And if it had been, I would have kept it open. So in that way, it's kind of a personal failure for me. But I had an extremely lofty goal to have it profitable within a year. So that's just didn't happen. So we weren't ready to go for COVID. But I experienced what Gary Vaynerchuk talks about a lot. Entrepreneurs, when you start a business, you put it out there, everybody sees it, and you have to go through this, like almost shedding your skin. You know, I was coming from an Air Force and defense contracting background and doing that, and people are like, "What?" You know, I just had quit my job and had been unemployed and thought about what I was going to do, and then this is what I did, and people couldn't believe it. And so it was like a really interesting kind of change of pace. And then when that failed, went through that was the exact same level of public, you know, and it was just interesting because life moves on and goes on, and you get to see that you get as many opportunities in life as you're willing to take, or as long as you're able to live. And now it's just so exciting for me that I got to stand up and just go and try again, you know, and I'm just going to be way better at it this time. So pretty excited just for that.
Yeah. The abundance of opportunities that we do have is a great exercise to go through, isn't it? You know, just to look back and be like, man, even if I did nothing for the rest of my life and I just stocked shelves, like, not to say anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, like, if you just wanted to do that for the rest of your life and realize how many opportunities that you've had, it's like, man, I probably have more opportunities in this short period of time in my life than some people are ever going to have for their whole life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like,
and just to be grateful for that, you know?
Yeah.
I think it gives you a sense of peace whenever you can do that and still want to relentlessly forward progress this whole life, you know, like, you know me, I'm never like paused. It's always go, go, go.
No,
however,
you're outside with ice frozen in your beard.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm also of the mindset that like it could all like go to pause and I would be so happy.
I do not agree with that statement for me, sir. If everything went to pause for me, I would instantly try to I would invent a play button.
Yeah.
I would have to. But I agree. There's something about that. It's just interesting that you said peace, because that's not what I get from it. I get drive. Like, I get drive when I think about the opportunities others don't have. And my internal voice just says, shut up and go to work. And it's not in a bad way. It's in such a motivating way. It's in like a dutiful way when I think about people that don't get to do what I do. You know what I mean? I think the only thing that comes out of that's negative is that I have so little tolerance for people complaining. I'm probably a dick to the people around me sometimes. I'm like, I don't care. Whatever you're talking about. I just think about in real drastic terms. I think about how lucky I am because my kids aren't My kids aren't dead. My kids aren't dying. Everybody is super healthy. And we're not homeless. We're not in danger of being homeless. Like,
right.
The every problem I have that stresses me out, if I'm walking around here and I'm like pacing, and this is what it looks like when I can't get anything done. I'm pacing, either anxious or depressed, and laying down under the weight of too many opportunities. That's what my worst day looks like, is I'm paralyzed by too much. And so it's a great exercise to think through that and think, okay, at least I still have to deal with it, but I can now base it in gratitude. Like, is there actually anything threatening me? No, everything is actually amazing for me. And I just have to see it that way and take a breath and process it, because I put it in the words, like, every problem I have is actually is a blessing. My problems are all blessings.
Truth.
And I've had real problems before, real problems come up, and that's just a fact. You're going to have a real fucking problem. Somebody is going to die,
Right.
That'll happen in your life. And so this is a day that didn't happen. Be happy. It's not a myth,
Mm-hmm. Well, hey man, we're coming up on the top of the hour. I want to get through anything else that you'd like to get through to our listeners, where they can find more information about your project or even about you in general. I'd love to get that across for them.
Thank you very much. So if you go to the best place right now is New Tortuga on Instagram, at New Tortuga, no spaces or periods or anything. And we'll have a link there to the Discord, and get in the Discord. We'll just be chatting and sharing information in there. We're just in the learning about us phase. So if you're tuning into our content, then you're exactly as engaged as I would love for you to be. Thank you very, very much for that.
Awesome. All right, Cory, thank you so much for joining us today. You are now part of the Stars Podcast fam. And as always, guys, enjoy the journey. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for sticking here until the very, very end. If you wouldn't mind just leaving a comment or subscribing or liking the podcast or wherever you downloaded this, maybe it was from YouTube, I would love for that. You take an extra couple seconds to give us some more love. Even though you have listened here to the very, very end, we appreciate that so much. Could you also go over to thestarspodcast.com if you found any of this really interesting and you wanted to dive in a little bit further, or go to our Discord, which is Rocinante Studios NFT. Enjoy the journey.
And be sure to check out our Twitter Spaces Tuesday live crew at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. Free NFTs and PO apps.